Ward, what did you do? You took the whole building down. There's no fire. That's what I did. That fire would have started below the stairwell you'd all be running down.
You said that like you knew it would happen.
I did know. Because I wrote it down. I warned him 3 times.
There was a cost review. It wasn't a priority. Wasn't a priority. You told me, word for word.
How long have you worked here?
19 years.
What's your name?
Caleb Ward.
Caleb.
The cardboard box sat on the passenger seat of Caleb Ward's truck for 11 years, and no one at Meridian Tower ever asked what was inside it. They saw the man. Gray coveralls, a ring of keys that could open every door in a 52-story building, boots worn soft at the heel. They saw him kneel in the mechanical rooms while they rode the elevators he kept alive. They saw him nod in the hallway, and they nodded back without slowing, the way you acknowledge a lamp or a doorframe, something that is simply supposed to work. What they did not see was the way his hands trembled every February. What they did not see was the box. And on the night the storm came and the building began to die from the inside out, the people who had never once asked him a single question would learn that the quiet man they walked past held the only thing standing between them and the dark. His name was Caleb, and he had worked in the bones of that tower for 19 years. He knew things about the building that were written in no manual. He knew that the number 3 chiller groaned a half second before it failed, a low complaint like an old dog rising from the floor. He knew which stairwell door swelled in humidity and had to be shouldered, not pulled. He knew that the emergency generator, the great diesel heart in the sub-basement, had a fuel line that ran too close to a steam pipe, and that on the coldest nights condensation formed there and dripped, one bead at a time, onto a fitting that should have been replaced in the spring. He had written that down. He had written it down 3 times. The first memo went to building management in the fall. The second went in December, when the first hard frost came, and he stood in the sub-basement, watching that single drop swell and fall, counting the seconds between, like a man counting the space between thunder and lightning. The third memo he handed directly to the new vice president of operations, a man named Blake who wore suits the color of storm clouds and carried a tablet the way a soldier carries a rifle. Blake had taken the memo. He had not read it. "We appreciate the vigilance, Caleb," Blake had said, already turning away. "But we're in a cost review. Every line item gets justified now. A fuel line that hasn't failed in 20 years isn't a priority." He had smiled the way men smile when they have already decided the conversation is over. Keep it running. That's the job. Keep it running. That was always the job. Caleb had folded the memo, the one Blake would not read, and put it in his shirt pocket, and gone back down to the bones of the building without another word. He was not a man who argued. He had learned, a long time ago, that the world did not soften for the ones who shouted. So he watched the drip, and he waited, and he did what he always did, which was carry the weight nobody else could see. He was 44 years old, and he had been carrying it for a long time. At home, in a small house 40 minutes from the tower, there was a girl named Lily, who was 10 years old and had her mother's laugh. She did not remember her mother. Rose had died when Lily was not yet 2, a fever that turned in a single week from an ordinary thing into the end of the world. And by the time Caleb understood what was happening, there was nothing left to do but hold his wife's hand and promise her he would not let their daughter forget her. That was the promise. That was the box. Inside the cardboard box on the passenger seat of his truck were the things of Rose that Caleb could not put in the ground and could not keep in the house, because in the house they broke him, and he could not afford to break in front of Lily. A blue scarf that still, if he was honest with himself, held nothing of her anymore, though he pretended. A photograph of the 2 of them at a county fair, both of them squinting into a sun 11 years gone. A recipe card in her looping hand for the cornbread she made on Sundays. A hospital bracelet. A folded note that said, in the last handwriting she ever managed, Be brave for both of us. He kept the box in the truck because the truck was the one place that was only his. In the house, he was a father, steady and whole. In the tower, he was a supervisor, quiet and reliable. But in the cab of that truck, in the 10 minutes before he walked into either life, he could open the flaps and put his hand on the blue scarf and let himself, for exactly 10 minutes, be a man who had lost the only woman he ever loved. Then he would close the box, and he would go and keep it running. The woman who owned Meridian Tower did not know Caleb Ward existed. Her name was Vivian Hale, and she was the kind of successful that the city put on the sides of buses. She had built her company out of a single leased floor into a firm that filled 20 stories of her own building, and she had done it by being harder and faster and more certain than everyone who told her she could not. She was 51. She wore her success like armor, and she had earned every plate of it. Her assistant left fresh flowers on her desk each Monday, and Vivian passed them 100 times a week and could not have told you their color. When people shook her hand, they were always the ones to let go first. She signed birthday cards for 200 employees without once slowing to read a name. Somewhere in all the earning, she had become a woman who was touched by nothing and touched nothing back, and she had not noticed it happen, because there had been no one close enough to tell her. Vivian had a daughter too, grown now, in another city, who did not call. She had an office on the 52nd floor, with a window that looked out over the whole grid of the city, and she stood at that window most nights long after the building emptied, and she could not have told you why she stayed so late in a place that no longer felt like anything but a machine she was responsible for. She and Caleb had passed each other exactly twice in 19 years, and both times she had not seen him. The storm came in on a Thursday in February. The forecasters had been calling it a system for 3 days, a great gray wheel of it turning up the coast, and by afternoon the rain had started. Not the soft kind, but the hard slanting kind that came in sheets and turned the windows of the tower to running silver. The wind found the corners of the building and made a sound like something grieving. On the upper floors you could feel the whole structure move, a slow, deep sway, the way a tall tree moves, and the people who worked there gripped their desks and told each other it was normal. Buildings were designed to sway, and they were right, and it did nothing to comfort them. Caleb felt the storm before he saw it, the way he felt everything about the building, through his feet and his hands, and the change in the sound of the air handlers. He was in the sub-basement at 4 in the afternoon when the temperature outside dropped 11 degrees in an hour, and he went straight to the generator room, and he stood in front of the fuel line, and he watched the drip that was no longer a drip. It was a thread now, a thin, bright thread of diesel running down the fitting and pooling on the concrete, and the steam pipe 6 inches away was hot enough to matter, and Caleb felt the whole shape of the night arrange itself in front of him, like a thing he had already seen. He called Blake. "The generator fuel line is failing," Caleb said. "Right now, tonight. If we lose city power in this storm, and that generator kicks on and pulls hard through that line, we're going to have diesel spraying onto a live steam pipe in a sealed room. I need to shut the generator out of the automatic transfer sequence, and I need to isolate that line. And I need to do it in the next hour." There was a pause on the line. In the background, Caleb could hear the murmur of a meeting, the clink of a glass. "Shut it out of the sequence," Blake repeated. "You want to disable the backup power for the entire building during a storm. I want to disable one generator that's about to become a fire in a room full of fuel. There's a manual protocol. I can bring it up safe once the line's isolated. But if it auto-starts the way it's set now..." "Absolutely not!" Blake's voice had gone flat and cold. "Do you understand what you're asking? We have 300 people in this building and a weather event outside. My job is to keep the lights on. Your job is to keep the equipment running. You do not touch the backup power. Are we clear?" Caleb looked at the thread of diesel. "You could look at it yourself. Come down and look. 10 minutes. "I don't have 10 minutes, Caleb. I have a building to run." The line went dead. Caleb stood alone in the generator room with the rain hammering somewhere far above him, and for a moment he was so tired he could have sat down on the wet concrete and not gotten up. He thought about Lily, at home with the neighbor, doing her homework at the kitchen table. He thought about Rose's note, "Be brave for both of us." He did not have the authority to shut down the generator. Blake had made that a wall. But there was one thing Caleb could still do, and he did it. He went to the maintenance closet and he got every absorbent pad they had, and he laid them under the fitting, and he ran a temporary catch pan, and he rigged a length of hose to divert the drip into a bucket he could empty by hand. It was not a fix. It was a man, with his hands against the ocean. But it would buy hours, and hours were all he had. Then he went and put a fire extinguisher on the wall 6 inches from the steam pipe, where there had never been one, and he stood back and looked at it, and he knew it would not be enough if the thing he feared came true. He was still there at 8 o'clock when the city power failed. It did not fail gently. Somewhere across the city, a substation went under the storm, and in the space of a single heartbeat, the whole tower went black. 52 stories of darkness, 300 people frozen at their desks in the sudden absolute dark, with the rain roaring against the glass. For 1 second, there was nothing. And then, deep in the sub-basement, Caleb heard the sound he had been dreading for 4 months. The transfer switch threw. The generator, exactly as Blake had insisted it remain, kicked into its automatic start, and its great diesel heart began to turn, and it pulled hard and fast through the failing fuel line, and the thread of diesel became a spray. Caleb was already moving. He did not have time to think, and so he did not think. He knew this room the way he knew his daughter's face. He knew that if the spray reached the steam pipe, there would be a fire in a sealed space, directly beneath the only 2 functioning stairwells, and that the smoke would rise through the shafts, and that 300 people would be trying to come down in the dark through smoke. He knew he had perhaps 40 seconds. He hit the manual fuel shutoff first, the valve that Blake's protocol had told him never to touch, and he threw his whole weight against it, and it fought him the way old iron fights, and then it gave. The spray died. The generator, starved, began to wind down, and the emergency lights that had flickered on died with it, and the building fell back into the dark. But the fuel had stopped. The room was thick with the smell of diesel, and Caleb was soaked to the elbow in it, and he stood there in the black shaking, and he understood that he had just, with his own 2 hands, plunged the entire tower into darkness in the middle of a storm. Blake would have his job for this. Caleb knew it even then, but there was no fire, and that was the only arithmetic that mattered. He pulled the flashlight from his belt, and then he did the second thing, the thing no manual could have told him, the thing that only 19 years of listening to a building could teach a man. Because now the tower had no city power and no generator, and 300 people were in the dark, and the elevators were dead, and somewhere above him, the fear was already beginning. 52 floors up, Vivian Hale stood in her dark office with her phone in her hand and no signal, and for the first time in 20 years, she was afraid. She had felt the lights die and the sway of the building, and she had heard, faintly, through the door, the sound of people beginning to lose their composure, and she had gone out into the reception area of the 52nd floor to find her assistant and 2 young analysts and a man from accounting, all standing in the dark with their phones held up like small, useless torches. The elevators were gone. The stairwell, when someone opened the door, breathed up at them a faint smell of something chemical and wrong, and a woman began to cry. And Blake, who had come up to be near the CEO when the storm turned bad, Blake was saying over and over that it was under control, that the generator would come back, that this was a temporary fault. When? Vivian said. Her voice cut through the dark. When will the generator come back, Blake? And Blake did not have an answer, because Blake did not know that far below him, a man he had dismissed twice was the only reason the building was not on fire. Down in the dark, Caleb worked. He knew that without power, the building was more than inconvenienced. He knew that the sump pumps in the sub-basement had stopped, and that in a storm like this one, the groundwater would rise, and that if it rose high enough it would reach the electrical vault, and that if it reached the electrical vault, then even after the city came back, there would be no bringing this building online for weeks. And worse, there would be live current in rising water, in a space where someone might have to go. He knew that the smoke evacuation fans were dead, and that the diesel he had spilled would sit and gas the sub-basement unless he moved the air by hand. He knew the fire panel was on battery backup, and would hold for hours but not forever. He knew that somewhere above him 300 people were being told to stay calm by men who did not know what he knew. So he did the thing he had done every day for 19 years, the thing nobody watched. He kept it running. He got the portable pump from the storage bay, and he ran it off the small independent battery bank he had insisted on installing 3 years ago over the objection of a man very much like Blake, and he set it to hold the groundwater back from the vault. He cracked the exterior louvers by hand, wrenching the frozen mechanism open with a pry bar, and he set a fan on the battery bank to pull the diesel air out into the storm. He walked the 2 functioning stairwells top to bottom with his flashlight, checking each door, propping open the swollen one on the 14th floor so no one would be trapped behind it. Somewhere on the 11th landing he stopped, just for a moment, and put his back against the cold concrete wall and closed his eyes. His arms ached from the valve and the pry bar. The diesel had soaked through to his skin, and he could feel it, cold and stinging. And it came to him, the way it came to him on the hardest nights, that if something took him down in this staircase right now, in the dark, no one in this building would know his name to say it. He would be a shape they stepped over. He thought of Lily's face at the kitchen window, waiting. Be brave for both of us. Then he pushed off the wall and kept climbing, because the wanting to be seen was a luxury, and the work was not, and the work was the only thing that had ever carried him through. He did in 1 hour, alone, in the dark, more than the emergency plan on Blake's tablet had ever imagined, because the emergency plan had been written by someone who had never once knelt on that concrete floor and listened to the building breathe. And then he began to climb in earnest. 52 floors, in the dark, with a flashlight and a radio that only reached the security desk. He climbed because he knew that people were trapped on the upper floors with no information and rising fear, and that fear in the dark in a swaying building was its own kind of fire, and that someone had to go up and tell them, floor by floor, that the building was safe, that there was no fire, that help was here. He climbed because that was the job, the real job, the one that had never been in any description. He reached the 52nd floor a little after 10. He came through the stairwell door with his flashlight and his soaked coveralls and the smell of diesel on him, and they turned toward him in the dark, a dozen frightened faces in the small failing light of their phones, and for a moment no one recognized him. He was just a shape, just the man who fixed things, the one they walked past. Then Blake said, "Ward, what the hell did you do? You took the whole building down. Do you have any idea?" "There's no fire," Caleb said quietly. He was breathing hard from the climb, but his voice was steady. "That's what I did. I stopped the fire that was about to start in the generator room, which is directly below the north stairwell, which is the stairwell you would all have been trying to come down in the smoke." He set his flashlight on the reception desk, pointing up, so the light spread soft across the ceiling, and they could all see one another. "The generator's out. The fuel line failed the way it was going to fail, so we're on manual now. The pumps are holding, the air is moving. The stairs are clear, and I've walked every one of them. The city crews are working the substation. We're going to be all right, but we do it my way from here, because I'm the only one in this building who knows how it's put together." There was a silence, and in the silence a woman stepped forward from the dark by the window, and the flashlight caught the gray in her hair and the sharp intelligence in her eyes, and Caleb realized he was looking at Vivian Hale. She looked at him for a long moment. She looked at the diesel on his sleeves, and the exhaustion in his face, and the flashlight he had set down so that frightened people could see one another, and something moved behind her eyes that had not moved in a very long time. "You said the fuel line failed the way it was going to fail," Vivian said slowly. "You said that like you knew." "I did know," Caleb said. "How?" And here Caleb reached into his shirt pocket, the pocket where he kept things, and he took out a folded piece of paper, soft now from months of folding, and he held it out to her across the dark. "Because I wrote it down," he said, "in September and in December. And I put this one in Mr. Blake's hand in January and told him what would happen. It's all there, the line, the steam pipe, the drip. I asked him to let me fix it. I asked him to come look." Vivian did not take the paper. She turned her head, slowly, and she looked at Blake. Blake's face in the flashlight had gone pale. Vivian. He's got the situation completely out of context. There was a cost review. A fuel line that hadn't failed in 20 years wasn't a priority. Caleb finished quietly. You told me that too. I remember it word for word. The wind hammered the windows. Somewhere below them 100 stories of city sat dark. And Vivian Hale, who had built her whole life out of being the one who was never wrong, stood in the ruin of a night that a man in gray coveralls had just saved, and took the measure of what her building had done to him. Give me the paper, she said. Caleb handed it to her. She held it up to the light, and she read it. All 3 memos. The neat, plain hand of a man laying out a danger in language even a man who would not listen could have understood. When she finished, she folded it back along its soft creases, and she held it a moment longer than she needed to. How long have you worked in this building? She asked. 19 years. And I've never met you. No, ma'am. She looked at him. What's your name? Caleb Ward. Caleb, she said, as if she were setting the word somewhere, she would not lose it. And then, to Blake, without turning, you're going to want to be gone before I finish this night. We'll talk in the morning about how a man handed you a warning about a fire, and you filed it as a line item. They came down together, all of them, in the dark, and Caleb led them. He took the front of the line with his flashlight, and he put the 2 youngest analysts at the back with his radio, and he walked 300 people down 52 flights of stairs in a storm, floor by floor, gathering them as he went, calling out the numbers so no one lost their place, propping the swollen door on 14 so the line could pass. It took 2 hours. When someone panicked, he stopped and stood with them until they could breathe. When an older man from the 30th floor could not manage the stairs, Caleb carried him the last 8 flights, without once making the man feel he was a burden. He knew every landing. He knew every turn. He had walked those stairs 10,000 times in the daylight when no one was watching. And now, in the dark, all that unwatched walking became the thing that brought 300 people home. Vivian walked near the front, just behind him, and she watched him do it. She watched him remember the name of the security guard on the 40th floor, and the fact that the man had a newborn at home. She watched him steady, a weeping woman with 2 quiet words. She watched a man who owned nothing in that building save his own competence carry it, and everyone in it, down through the dark, and she thought about all the years she had stood at her window on the 52nd floor, believing she understood what held her company up. She had understood the money. She had never once understood the man. At the bottom, in the lobby, the emergency crews had finally arrived, and the great glass doors let in the roar of the storm and the flash of red lights turning in the rain, and the 300 people spilled out into the care of others, and it was done. No one had been hurt. There had been no fire, and almost no one, in the confusion and relief, thought to wonder why. Caleb did not go with them. He turned, at the bottom of the stairs, to go back down, back to the sub-basement, back to the pumps that needed tending, and the water that was still rising, and the long, dark hours of holding the building together until the city came back. He was going back down into the bones of it, the way he always had, while everyone else walked out into the light. Caleb. He stopped. Vivian was standing in the lobby, wet, exhausted, the folded memo still in her hand. Where are you going? The pumps, he said. They won't hold themselves. And the vault's not safe yet. It's not over. It's after midnight. It's after midnight, and the water's still rising, ma'am. That doesn't change what needs doing. She looked at him. And then, to the astonishment of the fire captain standing beside her, Vivian Hale, who had not left the executive floors of her own building in years, who ran a company from a glass tower and did not know where the stairs were, said, "Then I'm coming with you. Show me what you do." He almost said no. It was not a place for her. But there was something in her face that was not the CEO and was not the armor, something younger and more honest, and he understood that she was not asking to supervise. She was asking to see. So he nodded, and he took her down. He took her into the bones of the building. He showed her the sub-basement and the portable pump running off the battery bank he had fought to install, and the water it was holding back from the vault, dark and cold and rising a quarter-inch an hour. He showed her the generator room and the failed fuel line and the absorbent pads and the catch pan and the hose he had rigged that afternoon, the man against the ocean, and she understood, seeing it, that he had known for hours what was coming and had spent those hours doing everything he was allowed to do, and then, when the moment came, the one thing he was not. He showed her the louver he had wrenched open with a pry bar to move the diesel air. He showed her the fire extinguisher he had hung on the wall 6 inches from the steam pipe where there had never been one, because he had known and no one had asked. "You could have let it burn," she said quietly, standing in the diesel smell of the dark room. "You told him. You warned him 3 times. If it had caught fire tonight, it would have been his name on it, not yours. You could have stepped back and let the building prove you right." Caleb was quiet for a moment, working the pump, his hands sure in the dark. "There were 300 people up there," he said. "Being right wouldn't have carried a single one of them down the stairs." He looked at her. "I don't do this to be right. I do it because it needs doing, and I know how. That's the whole of it." Vivian Hale had spent 30 years in rooms full of the most impressive people money could buy, and she could not remember the last time anyone had said anything to her as true as that. They worked through the night. She was no use, at first, and she knew it, and to her credit, she did not pretend otherwise. She held the flashlight. She emptied the catch bucket when he told her to. She learned the rhythm of the pump, and she watched the water, and she called out the level so he could work. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, soaked and filthy and more tired than she had been in years, sitting on an overturned crate in the sub-basement of her own building, Vivian Hale began, quietly, to talk. She told him about the daughter who did not call. She told him about the window on the 52nd floor, and the nights she stood at it not knowing why she stayed. She told him she had built all of it, the whole tower, 20 floors of her own company, and that lately she had been standing at the top of it, wondering what exactly she had built, because it did not seem to hold anything warm. And Caleb, who was not a man who talked, found himself talking too. He told her about Rose. He had not spoken Rose's name aloud to another adult in longer than he could remember, and it came out of him slow and careful, the way a man crosses ice. He told her about the fever, and the week that ended the world, and the promise he had made, that he would not let their daughter forget her mother. He told her about Lily, 10 years old, with Rose's laugh, waiting at home with the neighbor, while her father held up a building in the dark. "Do you know," he said, and stopped, and then went on. "Because the dark made it possible, there's a box in my truck, just a cardboard box. It's got her things in it, a scarf, a photograph, a note she wrote at the end." He was quiet. "I keep it in the truck, because I can't keep it in the house. In the house, I have to be all right for Lily, and I can't be all right and hold that box at the same time. So I keep it in the truck, and every day before I come in here, I sit with it for 10 minutes, and then I close it up and I come to work, and I keep the building running." He gave a small breath that was almost a laugh. 19 years. Nobody ever asked me what was in the box. Nobody ever asked me anything. Vivian was quiet for a long moment in the dark. "I'm asking," she said. And it was such a small thing. 2 words. But Caleb had spent 11 years being looked through, and 19 years being walked past, and a lifetime being the thing that was simply supposed to work. And no one, in all of it, had ever sat down in the dark beside him and said, "I'm asking." He found that he could not answer her right away. He worked the pump, and he let the moment sit. And the rain came down on the city, 52 stories above them. And something in him that had been closed for a very long time came open. Just a crack, just enough. The city power came back a little after 5 in the morning. It came back the way it had left, all at once. The great tower, waking floor by floor, the lights stuttering on, the machines beginning their hum, the water in the sub-basement already retreating, as the real pumps caught and took over from Caleb's small, brave, battery-driven one. He walked the systems one by one as they came alive, checking, listening, the way he always did. And Vivian walked with him, and by the time the sun came up gray and clean over the washed and steaming city, the building was whole again. They stood together in the lobby, as the first daylight came through the great glass doors. Caleb was gray with exhaustion and filthy and swaying a little on his feet. And Vivian did not look much better. Her clothes ruined, her composure long since set aside, and neither of them cared at all. "Go home," she said. "See your daughter. Take a week. Take 2. With pay." She paused. "And when you come back, we're going to talk about who actually runs this building. Because it isn't me, and it isn't Blake. It's been you, for 19 years, and I never once asked." Caleb looked at her. "You? Asking now?" The corner of her mouth moved. It was not quite a smile. It was the beginning of one, the first in a long time, and it changed her whole face. "I'm asking now." He drove home in the early light, with the rain finally gone, and the streets washed clean, and the cardboard box sat on the passenger seat where it always sat. But when he pulled into his own driveway and saw the kitchen light on and Lily's small face appear at the window, watching for him the way she always watched, he did not open the box the way he always did. He picked it up, he carried it inside, and for the first time in 11 years, he set it on the kitchen table in front of his daughter, and he said, "Come here, Lily. I want to show you your mother." And they sat together, the two of them, in the morning light. And he took out the blue scarf, and the photograph, and the recipe card, and he told her about Rose. All the things he had kept locked in the truck, because he thought he had to carry them alone. Lily held the scarf to her face. She did not remember her mother, but she held the scarf, and she listened to her father's voice, and she was not forgetting anymore. The box had been a thing he carried alone in the dark. Now it was open on the table in the light, and it was lighter, and so was he. Vivian Hale changed the way she ran her building. She did it slowly, and she did it for real. Blake was gone within the week, and the story that went around was polite and vague, but everyone understood. In his place, Vivian did something no one expected. She did not hire another vice president of operations in a storm cloud suit. She created a new position, and she gave it to Caleb, and she wrote the job description herself, and at the top of it, before any of the duties, she put a single sentence. "Before any order is given in this building, one more question must be asked of the people who keep it running." She had it framed. She hung it in the lobby. And she took to coming down, in the evenings, when the building had emptied, not to the 52nd floor window where she had stood alone for 20 years, but down, into the bones of the place, where a quiet man in gray coveralls was usually still working. She would bring 2 cups of coffee. She would sit on the overturned crate, and she would ask him questions, real ones, and listen to the answers, and slowly, over the months, in the way that the best things in this world happen, without either of them deciding it or rushing it, 2 lonely people who had spent their lives being strong for everyone else began to be, quietly, a little less alone. It was not a fast thing. Neither of them was young, and both of them had learned the hard way to be careful with what was left of their hearts. But she asked, and he answered, and one evening in the spring, she brought cornbread she had made herself from a recipe Caleb had given her, off a soft old card in a looping hand. And Caleb looked at that pan of cornbread for a long moment and could not speak, and Vivian understood, and did not need him to. The building never failed again. Everyone said it was the best-run tower in the city. But that was never really the point, and Caleb knew it, and by the end so did Vivian. The point was never the fuel line or the pumps or the water held back from the vault. The point was a man that everyone had walked past for 19 years, carrying a box no one ever asked about, holding up a whole world, with hands no one ever thanked. And the point was the one small sentence that could have changed everything, if it had only been said in time. You could have asked one more question before giving one more order. Blake never learned it. It cost him a career, and it nearly cost 300 people their lives. But Vivian learned it, in the dark, from a quiet man with diesel on his sleeves. And it did not cost her anything except her certainty, and in exchange it gave her back a life she thought she had finished living. One more question. That was all it ever took. Not more money, not more power, not more orders given from the top of a glass tower. Just the willingness to turn to the person the world overlooks and say the 2 truest words there are. "I'm asking."